Let's talk about Udemy, the leading learning platform that recently announced its plans to go public in the red-hot online education market. I've been a firm believer for years that online is the future of education, and that is just a matter of finding the right business model. There are many companies trying out various approaches to make money in this field, and Udemy seems to be the one that finally got it right. Now, before we continue and talk about Udemy's business model, its IPO prospectus, and potential for future growth, here's a disclaimer first. I'm very biased in favor of Udemy because I'm using the platform extensively, and it's been extremely valuable to me both as an instructor and a learner. I do not have the same satisfaction level with other websites, although I'm active on many of them as well and know this market inside out. Also, I plan to buy Udemy shares at the IPO, but I'm not a financial advisor and you should do your own research and make your own decisions. So, what is Udemy and how is it different from its competitors? Udemy is a marketplace where you can find 180,000 courses as of the end of 2021, teaching a variety of technical and business skills as well as personal development topics. There are millions of learners accessing this content, 44 million to be precise, and in 2020 there were 200 million enrollments in courses overall. Now let's pull out the good old business model canvas for this video. Udemy has two main sources of revenue, which are consumer sales and Udemy Business. Consumer sales is when you go and buy an individual course that you like for a price between $10 and $200. A percentage of that revenue goes to Udemy, another one to the instructor who created the course, and the rest also includes technical fees like App Store or affiliate commission. This is clearly a volume-driven business because the price is quite low, but it gets counterbalanced by the number of courses that one individual learner will buy throughout the years. If I take my own example, I'm enrolled in 29 courses, the majority of which I paid for, because there are also free courses, but I'll get back to them later. Most people don't buy courses for the maximum listed prices because there are regular promotions, so they rather wait until they see a good opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, I mostly paid between $15 and $30 per course. But now promotions became more and more rare and prices have been increasing since Udemy understood that they need to gradually move away from a discounter model. Still, courses remain very affordable on average and their value makes sense. An online course should be priced like a good book, so a few dozen dollars. And the most I've ever paid for a book was around $150, which was a fat astronomy education science book for a college class. Not exactly this one, but similar. Therefore, Udemy's price range is just right. Udemy Business is their corporate subscription program where companies buy access to classes in bulk for their employees. Only the best-rated courses are selected by Udemy for this program, and inclusion comes with an exclusivity clause, making this catalog very valuable. For example, my Business Model Innovation course is included in the Udemy Business catalog, and you cannot find this course on any other platform except my own website, which is the only exception that's allowed. Instructors who are part of this program receive additional revenue based on the time that their course was watched. This segment is growing the fastest for Udemy, and in 2021 they had 8,600 global Udemy for Business customers, including 42 companies of the Fortune 100. The satisfaction level of both consumers and corporate learners on Udemy is extremely high, and usually people who take one course on Udemy recommend the website to their friends and family. In addition to this, Udemy just started experimenting with a consumer subscription model as well, where a student will be able to pay a certain amount per month to access another version of their curated catalog. Interestingly, while this is new for Udemy, it has been the model of websites like Skillshare since the beginning. So now a user will have quite some choices about how to access a course. Lastly, there are also free courses, but they are slowly getting squeezed out from the platform because they usually have a very low engagement rate and the free crowd has a low conversion rate towards paying courses. So as you can see, Udemy was and still is constantly experimenting with its revenue model because this space is not set in stone. And Udemy competitors are often doing things very differently, but I'll get back to this point later in the video. Before we talk about Udemy's competition and dive into the numbers, let's see their other value propositions, which is what makes the quality of the content on the platform better than anywhere else. This would be the fact that anybody can be an instructor on Udemy. You can be an instructor if you have something interesting to teach, and the market will decide the worth of your content thanks to social validation. There is nothing better than student reviews to rank a course. And when you see one with thousands of students enrolled and hundreds of reviews, you know that it's very likely of great value. Udemy's algorithm also takes into account the engagement rate of each course, which means that students don't only show their satisfaction through their ratings and reviews, but also through their actual behavior. A course that is relatively more completed than others in its category means that it's more engaging. That's why the best experts in their fields and those who create engaging courses naturally rise to the top of the hundreds of categories that you can find on the website. So yes, it's not just enough to be an expert, one must also know how to teach in an interesting way, which makes learning on Udemy addictive and practical to the extent that is possible through a screen. Finally, since every instructor has the freedom to manage their course content at all times, it also means that courses are up to date, which is a crucial point. Unlike universities, which often have a lengthy procedure of approval of curriculum changes, a Udemy course can be updated instantly. Therefore, the content is more relevant, good instructors update it when necessary, and send email notifications to their students who can immediately go and learn what's new. Now, add one last value proposition for students here, which is the unconditional 30-day money-back guarantee across the platform, even if they completed the course, and it makes the whole offer irresistible. When it comes to Udemy competitors, the direct ones are platforms like Skillshare for individual learners and LinkedIn Learning for corporate ones. But there are also more specialized websites, such as Pluralsight, or those that are more based on degree and certification approach like Coursera. What's interesting here is that all of them use different strategies, whether it is the revenue model or the way they source educational content. LinkedIn Learning, for example, select and work personally with instructors. They fly these experts to their offices in professional recording studios and watch over the whole content creation process. This is extremely costly compared to Udemy, where the same experts have the freedom to create their content as they wish from wherever they want, and which most of the time arrive at better results compared to when a small team of people standardizes the content in their own traditional way for everybody. But still, they are a major competitor to Udemy Business simply because of their natural corporate reach, thanks to being the main corporate social network. Skillshare is probably the website that comes the closest to being a direct competitor to Udemy consumer segment. But they lack the breadth of Udemy course categories with a much more limited choice of classes, and they also lag behind in terms of international reach where Udemy excels. Actually, more than 60% of Udemy revenue comes from outside North America, which is very surprising. As Udemy grows, they expand into local markets where instructors start to create more and more courses in their local languages, which in itself contributes to growing these local markets organically. Instructors can make very high incomes by selling courses only in Turkish or Italian or many other languages, while Skillshare has almost no courses in languages other than English. The fact that there is not even a filter to select courses per language just shows how far behind they are in terms of international reach, even though they remain a very serious competitor to Udemy overall. This international reach gives a huge advantage to Udemy, which helps to solidify its position as the leader of online learning. Now, coming to Udemy financial results, as usual, nothing is perfectly clear with emerging growth companies. They keep posting operational losses because they are still investing in their growth. Also, Udemy is going public in 2021, and therefore the financial results from the previous 2 years are skewed because of the pandemic. But let's see what we can learn from the numbers we have on hand. So, there was obviously a huge boost in this business as millions of people flocked to online learning while in lockdown, and that can be seen in Udemy revenues of 2020 compared to 2019, which were 430 million and 276 million respectively, a jump of 150 million, which is huge. For 2021, we can only extrapolate from the results of the first 6 months of operations, which generated $250 million. So if we just blatantly multiply this by 2 to make a full year, Udemy could reach 500 million in 2021. However, this would be a low estimate in my opinion for two reasons. First of all, a great chunk of Udemy revenue is generated at the end of the year with Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Second, the numbers show that in second half of 2020, they made more money than in the first half. If we extrapolate the same proportion to 2021, they might reach at least 530 million in revenue. But if the proceeds from the IPO are used heavily for sales and marketing right away, then the total could also be more than that. Now, if we just stay at 530 million and compare that to 276 million in 2019 and 430 million in 2020, at first the growth seems to be slower. From plus 55% in 2020 to plus 23% in 2021 seems like a big slowdown. But looking at it without context would be completely misleading. It's really important to understand how unique of a year 2020 has been for any kind of internet company. You can see it from my own income, for example, the substantial jump in revenue from March to May 2020 when most of the world started going into lockdowns, and which then decreased and stabilized during most of 2021. So clearly no one should expect the same pace of growth in the years after 2020, but the fact that Udemy still grows at all in 2021 is an extremely encouraging sign. However, it's important to differentiate the consumer growth and corporate growth. Consumer revenue actually only grew by 9% from 2020 to 2021, and it's Udemy Business that does all the heavy lifting with a 79% growth here. To be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised even if consumer revenue actually decreased, because once again, 2020 was not a normal year. But even the small 9% growth shows that the flock to online learning wasn't just a fad. People who discovered it actually got hooked and kept buying and enrolling in new courses. And concerning Udemy Business, given the pace of its growth, it's understandable why this is becoming the most valuable segment for the company and how the competition with LinkedIn Learning is intensifying. Udemy Enterprise revenue might actually surpass the consumer one sometime around 2023 if both segments keep similar paces of growth. Now, of course, all of that was about the revenue, but what about the profit? When we look at the statements in terms of percentage of revenue, Udemy first deducts the costs of revenue, which include mainly the instructor's share, all the fees associated with the payment process, hosting of content and salaries of customer support, among others. Cost of revenue represents roughly half of all revenue with a slight decreasing tendency thanks to the growth of Udemy Business, which is way more profitable for Udemy than consumer sales. These are the costs that are needed to generate the revenue no matter what. Then you have all the costs associated with sales and marketing, R&D, and the general ones. As you can see here, sales and marketing expenses have actually decreased, which is a good sign. Because one could assume that Udemy needs to constantly and heavily invest in marketing to generate revenue. But from here, it's clear that they are indeed able to lower these expenses while the revenue is growing. The other two main expense areas are stable as proportion of revenue, and the best information here is that their operating loss is decreasing, meaning that they can eventually achieve profitability. That is, of course, once they also deal with their accumulated deficit of $107 million. Therefore, looking at the numbers, the outlook is rather positive. Udemy revenue is growing, the cost of revenue is decreasing, as well as the operating losses. They're also able to lower the sales and marketing expenses in the process. This is, however, to be nuanced with the fact that maybe most of this positive news are due to the enterprise segment. In fact, Udemy is often viewed as a discounter, and many students got used to waiting for the best promotions before buying a course. As I explained in the beginning of this video, Udemy has been focused on working away from this model by increasing the average sales prices and reducing the number and duration of promotions. So it's not really clear whether this segment by itself could be profitable without constant sales and marketing efforts. But the enterprise one seems to be what will eventually drive Udemy to profitability. Again, these are all just assumptions and guesses based on the information provided in the prospectus and my own experience. Speaking of which, I also firmly believe that Udemy is far away from its growth potential in the consumer segment itself. It still seems that many people are not aware of Udemy, and once they visit the website and try it, they start buying more and more courses because they get addicted to learning. They see how broad the offer of courses is and how much of an amazing deal it is to be able to access such advanced knowledge and skills for only a few dozen bucks. Udemy is also the best positioned for international expansion, in my opinion. However, none of this says anything about how Udemy stock will perform after its IPO, and I'm in no position to give any advice to you here. There's also not much comparison except Coursera, which went public recently, so let's take a quick look. Coursera also has a consumer and enterprise segment, but also an additional one called Degrees. Overall, their growth pace is very similar and they clearly both benefit from the online education market lift. However, Udemy still makes substantially more money than Coursera overall. In 2020, Udemy generated $429 million, while Coursera made $293 million. In terms of cost of revenue, they are also very similar and both publish net operating losses. Though it has to be noted that net loss for Coursera was 23% of total revenue in 2020, whereas for Udemy it was 19%, and Udemy managed to lower it down to 11% in the first half of 2021, while Coursera actually increased to 33%. Funny enough, they don't even show this number clearly, but we can see here that in the first quarter of 2021, the net loss was 21% of revenue, and in the same document for the second quarter 2021, this net loss margin line is absent. It's easy to calculate though. A loss of 46 million out of a revenue of 102 million equals a whopping 45% net loss margin. And the average of quarter 1 and 2 leads to a 33% one. So where it looks good for Udemy, it looks very bad for Coursera, which doesn't seem to be going toward profitability so far. So given how Coursera is valued today, Udemy should, and I say should because one never knows, be priced better than that if the stock market makes any sense, especially that beyond the numbers, Udemy simply has a better model overall. Coursera works with traditional academic providers for its classes, and while it can offer degrees which differentiate it from Udemy, Udemy still has a much better model because of everything said in the beginning of this video. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and if you did, I'd really appreciate a like for support. And feel free to comment your thoughts on Udemy as a service and as a business performance before its IPO. Let's talk about it.